Good morning from
Morning.
Huntsville, Alabama. It's live. Roger wasn't quite
Well, it's because
wetty.
our technological staff didn't get some things in place for us.
Boris, we've got a problem on mic 2 over here. Mic 2 is causing trouble today.
Boris called in sick today. That's why. Yeah.
So Roger was the tech guy today.
I was the tech guy, but we're up and running.
Fortunately, Suzanne had my microphone working right off the bat. Isn't it great to have a team?
Whose names change every single episode.
Well, we have had a bit of turnover with Pastords. Turns out working with us,
we just can't keep good people.
It's not as fun as it seems.
And part of the problem is just we haven't been able to get the sponsorships that we needed to get. so we can't keep good staff.
We got a sponsorship in 2020.
He did give it.
I think 2021 the sponsorships fell off to zero.
Yeah,
what I can remember.
There wasn't really a whole lot of. There wasn't a long line of people wanting to sponsor.
We're probably not marketing this thing like we should be.
Or it could be that someone is scared to death to be associated with this rambling.
Well, we would be saying your name a lot. Rob Abercrombie and the Abercrombie team, back when they sponsored us.
If you hadn't bailed on us.
Man, what a time to sell a house.
Yes.
So I talked to someone yesterday, and they've got like 12 pre-approvals for their clients and no houses.
Yeah.
It's just makes me feel like I should sell my house just to help people.
Well, it's funny, Bruce. You're funny you say this. It's Raj, my son.
Yeah.
They're getting ready to list their house in Wichita because they have moved now to North Carolina. So it's going to go on the market this weekend. But his realtor was saying that the typical right now in the current marketplace, someone bids on 12 different houses before they finally win a house.
12 bids.
Well, not 12
wow.
bids. So 12 different. In other words, they made 12 different attempts.
Right.
And it dawned on me, and I told him, I said, well, you realize now that house sales now are in auction.
Mm-hmm.
The asking price is the starting bid.
Starting bid. That's all it is.
And then,
yep.
So she, so it's funny, like his realtor said, okay, here's what we're going to list your house at. Here's what I think it'll probably sell. And some number that was 20 or 30,000
right.
Above that. So anyway, just very, very, there was another thing. His realtor was also saying almost a third of house purchases in this current marketplace were cash.
Wow.
I wouldn't have
thought that many people had that much cash. Isn't that interesting?
Well, yeah, that's its own.
So I was thinking about on the way in, and I told Marlena this a year and a half ago. So when we're in the heat of the pandemic and the government's printing money right and left, just printing money.
That's right.
Sending checks, sending checks.
What did you predict?
I said we're going to have massive inflation. And here's why. Not because I'm an economist, but I did have one class in economics that I think, I'm trying to think of the name of the guy. I really liked him. James Jesterton. Lawrence Jameson.
Economitis?
No, this was in high school. I didn't make it to college. Okay, so.
Oh, that's right.
But anyway, he was a great teacher. I loved him. It was just a lot of fun. He would sit on the corner of his desk and he would read every morning from Fox's Book of Martyrs, just to start the day.
Okay,
which was kind of gory a lot of times, but
cheers.
As a teenage boy, I'm like, that's awesome, man. Cut their legs off and whatever. So, but he also taught economics. And I remember when he said, anytime the government, he talks about what happened in Germany at the time. He said, anytime the government prints money, you're going to have massive inflation. In other words, there's nothing to back that up. We're just getting more cash into the system.
Right.
Well, so now we're paying $3 a pop for a dozen eggs and $4 for a gallon of gas, or $5.19 as I paid over the weekend because I have to put premium in my car.
Although I have questions about where that relates to pure inflation, as you're talking about there, and war in Ukraine, this Asian bird flu that's affecting egg prices.
That exacerbates everything.
Right.
Absolutely.
anyway, yeah. And to be honest, I didn't have those economics classes. I'm
You probably
generally
had them.
clueless with how all of those things work together. I'll try to read articles and but this current marketplace,
Well, it's a little bit like I said, if I said, all right, hey, Raj, I've got a car that I'm selling for $5,000. Okay. But I'm going to give you $1,000 and I want you to pay $6,000. So I just gave you money to pay $6,000. The car is still only worth $5,000, but you paid $6,000 for it. So now the perceived value of that, the inflated value of that car is $6,000.
Okay.
But you were able to pay the $6,000 because I gave you $1,000 that you didn't earn, that you didn't make. It was just there. It's like free money. All that to say, inflation is real. It's actually affecting some of my trips now. I'm like finding out some of my Machu Picchu numbers may not hold up, as in the pricing I got.
Oh,
I'm like, well, that's
because the prices are changing.
Yes. So I think my lock-in price is good. I hope the whole number, but then the add-ons are just going through the roof. Like if you want to do an extra hike above Machu Picchu to this Harumbu thing, which is actually looks down on Machu Picchu. Well, that was gonna be like a $40 hike. That may be a $100 hike now. I don't know. So we're gonna see the numbers, but of course I get it, because all the people that are working in Peru, inflation is across the board for people. Anyway, we'll see.
Yeah, I wonder how that even affects, like home building or any place where you're telling someone the price of a thing, but now
home builders are just saying they're just doing cost plus because they can't tell you what the cost is. But I realize even with cost plus labor, they may not even be sure what labor is going to cost them at this point.
Right.
So it's like whatever the materials are, this much for, I'm just like, it's a crazy time.
One other fun factoid. So I was talking to my son Raj, and we were talking about how much the growth in Huntsville has been, and
crazy, just crazy.
And it's still, like whatever the price of building materials are, it's not stopping any construction that I can see in Huntsville. It's just everywhere you go. I cannot believe. And so we were talking, and I was saying, recently Huntsville kind of overtook Huntsville proper, not the metropolitan, but the Huntsville proper became the largest city
in the state of Alabama.
And he said, I don't know if you know this, Dave. He said, but what used to throw me, he said, I used to think like Huntsville, that Mobile was so much larger than, let's say, Huntsville or Birmingham. He said, so much larger. He said, because of their skyline. I would look and see, okay, there are these tall skyscrapers, and you just see. And so it equate, you have these big, tall buildings downtown. Well, he just automatically related that to population size.
Right.
But then he found out Huntsville had a 10-story cap for decades and decades and decades and decades. You could not build.
So like the Huntsville Times building was the tallest building, as tall as you could get it.
Right. And he said there was one building, and that might have been the one that was built before the 10-story. So it was 11.
Okay.
And he said it was grandfathered in, but until relatively recently, he looked it up when it changed. But it's why Huntsville skyline doesn't have that. Now they can have, and I'm curious. I'm watching one building go up floor by floor.
Interesting.
About 2 blocks from where we are sitting.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering how high it's going to end up going.
It might be the race like they had in New York City for the tallest building.
But I didn't know if you knew that.
I did not know they had the 10-story rule. I knew that because I have an office downtown. I'm watching cranes all the time now.
Yes.
So there's cranes everywhere. And it's like, I was in Nashville for 2 days last week, and they have the same thing. So there's all this downtown. I was on Music Row for 2 days at a conference, and there's cranes and there's buildings, and there's buildings just going up everywhere. And then you'll see this little tiny little mom and pop restaurant that's a little 1-story thing. And I'm like, how long is that going to last? Someone's going to offer them like $10 million.
Right.
Just for that, because it's in between 2 skyscrapers. And I'm like, and a lot of these are hotels, just really tall, 15-story hotels. I'm like, at some point, someone's going to go, look, just get your little mom and pop out of there.
And that's what keeps happening. You're trying to buy up space to build up tall. So when you're how tall can you go?
So this is another thing that a lot of people don't know about Huntsville. Huntsville has more land mass than the city of Atlanta. Atlanta is far more population.
Okay.
But because we've annexed so much territory, even into Limestone County and all that, it's like Huntsville's got a lot of land to work with.
Interesting. And so now we can start going up higher.
We can go up higher,
at least
and
in downtown.
Out. Well, and I saw this morning, I got some notification that there's an 8,000 seat amphitheater being built.
Yep.
Where is that? Do you know?
Mid-City.
Is Mid-City? Okay.
Well, I'm pretty well. They are building an amphitheater in Mid-City.
Okay, so I saw pictures of it from a drone. It's a big old thing.
Yes.
Giant outdoor amphitheater.
Yeah, that's gonna be Mid-City.
And it's built like one side of it's built like the Roman Colosseum, which is fascinating looking.
I think. Yeah, they may be opening for venue. Already taking venue. I think for this fall or something.
Wow.
Um,
it's happening so fast. It's freaky.
Yeah.
It's like I don't recognize the city I've lived in for 28 years now.
Yeah. And I'm seeing a lot of traffic. Congestion.
I sent Roger a picture this morning because I was going to be a few minutes later than I was originally late. I had already told him I was going to be late, and then it got later because I'm going halfway up the mountain, and all of a sudden it just there's just nothing but traffic.
Total one other. We're all over the place, and I love it. So
do you love it?
When you were
that's why I'm moving down to Blunsville. Population 1,635.
I just love the fact that we don't have an agenda. So we get together and we just talk. So that's what. But I know you like everything in Masters golf tournament.
Oh, love it.
So the story that the little house you brought up. So the story I read this week is there's a couple that's got a house near the Masters. And people have been making offers on the house for years and years. And all of their neighbors, everyone around them, has eventually kind of given in and sold out. Even I think they had sold a house that they owned across the street or something. But they've been offered up to $1 million.
That doesn't seem like much.
Right. I thought the same thing.
House, across the street from the Masters.
I don't know just how close it is. I mean, but no, just a older couple. They've got their little 3-bedroom, 2-bath house or something, and it
reminds me of the animated movie Up, where he and his wife aren't going to sell. They got their little house in the middle, and the skyscrapers are going up all around them, and he's got his little mailbox out there, and he eventually moves the house with a bunch of balloons.
Alert! A spoiler.
Oh, sorry. That he may or may not have moved his house with a bunch
sorry,
of
kids.
balloons.
No need to watch that anymore.
No, it's actually quite good. It's a great story. I enjoy that whole. I mean, the first 10 minutes you'll be crying because it's so sad, but then after that it takes off a little bit and it's a little better.
The crotchety old man.
Yeah. Ed Asner he was the perfect person for it. So, reading this morning, just was curious. I wanted to get your take. I have my own take on things.
Okay.
I'd love to get your take. So I'm reading Jesus and
I'd
Luke.
love to give my take. Yeah.
And at one point, of course, crowds of people are following Jesus, and he's roaming around. And again, he's sort of achieved.
Roaming
in our culture, roaming rock star status. So thousands of people are flocking out to see him. Then at one point, someone asks him, "Lord, are only a few going to be saved?" And his answer is very interesting. Of course, sometimes Jesus was, in my mind, a little cryptic in the way that he responded.
Sometimes.
Several times, perhaps many times. But he says to this person, he said, "Be careful that you enter through the narrow way, for many will seek to enter and won't be able to. Once the master of the house gets up and closes the door, there won't be anyone coming in. And you," that's interesting. Person asked a question about, I think, everyone.
Right.
Will only a few people be saved? And he said, "And you will be on the outside knocking, and you'll be saying, 'Lord, let us in. You ate and drank in our streets, and you taught in our city, and we knew you.' And Jesus said, 'I never knew you. Get away from me, evildoers.'" And they were like shocked. And it said there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. And I thought about, he said, "You will see," and it goes back to you again. He said, "You will see Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob taking their seats in the kingdom of heaven. Then people from the north, south, east, and west also taking part. So I was curious what your take on was that what is this narrow way that Jesus alludes to, and he attaches it to entering the kingdom of heaven.
What is the narrow way?
Yeah, what's the narrow way? I wish you'd said what I mean by narrow way is. So I'm asking Roger what the narrow way is.
Yeah, I don't.
I think I bumfuzzled the Pastords.
Bumfuzzled.
It's a great word. You got to admit.
Well, one thing to think about is, even when we talked about narrow way and this few that find it, I don't think we may have talked about this before. Some have kind of extrapolated that, okay, all down through time and whatever. But it's another place where we have to have caution, where is part of what he's saying right now, only a few people are entering. I certainly think one part of that is there's the common way. There's the way everyone thinks things work, the things that they should.
And Jesus, in another teaching about the narrow way, referenced the broad road that leads to destruction, and many there be that take it.
Right. It makes me think, forgive me for getting poetic, but even that, and I took the road less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. There is the road everyone seems to be taking, and whether it's the peer pressure or just, this is just where the culture's going, we're heavily influenced by whatever culture we're a part of. And this is something I've been thinking a great deal about, is there's a way that seems right. And so often we look at what most people are doing. That's even what we define normal typically by is
right. Majority of people.
Even a democracy, we might say, well, what defines what's good and right is going to be what the majority wants, what the majority thinks. So there's an awful lot of credibility we give to the majority, to the heavily traveled path. But Jesus was calling people, you look how often he was. So the wide road, or what if you said the wide road is make a name for yourself. You get followers. You want to be in charge of people. But he would say, no, the narrow road is giving up. It's serving. It's so how many people want that road? I think part of what he can be talking about is we're drawn to the easier road.
Right.
Even if we take the road less traveled, maybe there's a road, that one that's less traveled. I got to cut through the thickets, or I've got to work. I don't know exactly where it's going. That large travel road, even when you go down a trail, I have a certain comfort level when I'm going down a heavily traveled path.
Yes.
But when I start going and I can't quite tell, is this trail going this way? And I'm not entirely sure. Well,
it's less traveled.
I get less comfortable.
Yeah.
And I realize we are drawn to the comfortable. This is the common way. Everybody sees, and everybody does it this way. And so even Jesus would say, well, this is how it works in the culture. People get positioned so they can tell people what to do. But I'm telling you, greatness is letting other people tell you what to, and you just serve them.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because right on the heels of that, he talks about if you're invited to an event,
right?
He said, don't take the seats of honor, because Jesus looked around and he noticed how people took the seats of honor. So in their culture, let's say it's like at the Inner City Learning Center fundraiser I was at last Thursday, you had tables really close to the front, and you have sort of sometimes these little VIP tables.
Were you at the head table? Or?
I was at the head table because I was speaking.
And not because you were seeking after that.
Didn't ask for it. They just said, here's your name tag. This is where you're sitting.
Why didn't you just say, I want to sit at that back table?
They said, because you have to get on stage within a second of your introduction. So it's quicker.
Oh, okay. So you did insist on the back table, and they
absolutely. I said, could I just sit in the lobby and watch on the
overflow room?
The overflow room. But I was thinking about the narrow way, and I, of course, I'm looking at. Oh, by the way, there was something I came up with yesterday in my counseling. You can see it on my wall. Are there moments or body of work? There's a temptation to take Jesus and look at just moments, and interpret Jesus in those moments. But I'm always, not always, but I seek to look at his whole body of work, because he taught about the narrow road before. And he talked before about people that call him Lord. And it's interesting. It seems to be the narrow way seems to be the person not only calls him Lord, but actually does what he says. And in other words, he would say at one point, why do you call me Lord, Lord, but don't do what I say? You know, that's like building your house on a sand. As soon as the torrent comes, it's wrecked. You're wasting your life. If you know about Jesus, you know about his teaching, you might even know a tremendous amount about the Bible. But if you're not actually putting the words of Jesus, the teaching of Jesus into effect, you're not actually doing them. It seems to me that is the narrow way, because the teaching of Jesus on certain things, on many things, it just seems hard. Countercultural. Love your enemies. Serve everybody. Pray for people that persecute
love
you.
Mercy.
Forgive no matter what. Mercy triumphs over justice.
Give when someone asks you.
Give when someone asks you. If someone takes from you, don't demand it back. Just give it to them. If someone, this is countercultural merit. Someone sues you and asks for your coat, give them your shirt as well.
Yeah.
And it seems like, well, I could never do that. So some people have taken the words of Jesus and actually said, well, these were metaphorical kinds of teachings about the way and the kingdom come, the kingdom in the next realm. And I'm like, no, I think Jesus meant right now. This is the way to live right now. And it is a narrow way. I love what you said about, because I've been on paths like that before, where I'm like, all of a sudden you're ducking and there's it's just not clear. You can see, sometimes you wonder, am I on a game trail?
Yeah.
Instead of a walking path, a human trail. But often those will lead you to some really cool destinations.
Yes.
Some stuff you will never see. The average person misses
and the average person isn't seeing.
And that's what I think about the way of Christ in this narrow way. I have determined, and I share this with clients, I share this from the stage, the narrow way, this actually doing what Jesus said, as countercultural as it seems and as hard as it seems, it is the key to emotional health. It's the key to actually a fulfilling life.
Yeah.
It's the key to a joy-filled life, because I thought, I was just praying to God the other day and just saying, thank you for the gift of forgiveness. And it's the gift of me being able to forgive someone else.
Yeah.
You know why that's a gift? I'm not hanging on to anything. Yeah. I don't have any negative emotions about that event.
Stuff that's eating you alive on the inside.
Person. I literally just go, they are free. They don't owe me anything. I pray that you'll bless them. And what happens is something in me has peace. And I wonder if the broad road, although most people are on it, but they don't have peace. They're worrying about things, and they're wanting to get theirs, and they want to make sure that if someone screws them, that they're going to screw them. And it's that, but this narrow way that Jesus is on is the beautiful way.
Yeah.
It's the path less taken, and it has made all the difference. So anyway, that was my take on this narrow way. I'm like, and I keep coming back to, in my preaching and teaching and any opportunity I give people, I'm going to just keep compelling people to actually do it.
Yeah.
My thing is not just teach the way of Christ, but Jesus said, teach them to obey.
Right.
Actually do this stuff. Watch what happens. Right. Watch what God does in your life. Watch what God does in your spirit. Watch what God does about worry and about stress and about anxiety. Yeah. There's just so much. Anyway, even the narrow way of forgiveness, which we think is so hard. When someone has wronged us, it feels very powerful I'm going to withhold forgiveness, and I'm going to be angry about that, and I'm going to write them off.
It can even feel that forgiveness is maybe even unhealthy.
Well, not only that, but it feels just.
Yes.
But Jesus says mercy triumphs over justice.
Yeah.
That is the God that we serve. Think about that. So many people think of God as only justice. And what I teach more and more is, no, God is good, God is love, and God is just.
Right.
As human beings, we can't possibly hold all of those things. On my best day, I can't be one of the three.
Yeah.
I might have a component of one of those three, but I can't be all three. And that's the thing that I love about just trusting Jesus. He is good.
Yeah.
He is love,
mm-hmm.
but he's also just. And those aren't antithetical. Those are not in opposition to each other. Maria and I were having an interesting talk about C.S. Lewis's book, The Great Divorce, where he talks about, it's this whole idea of heaven and hell on earth,
mm-hmm.
and how a lot of people just, you end up living in a hell on earth that you've
mm-hmm.
created. And he, at one point he says, at the end of the day, there will be those that say to God, thy will be done. And those that God says to them, your will be done. And that's sobering. Because I'm like, man, I want this narrow way. I was even praying, and God, just keep me on the narrow way, because there's always a temptation to stray off it, particularly when you can see the broad path over there.
A lot of people over there.
A lot of people over there, bigger, wider. It looks easier.
Yeah.
But we're missing this incredible path that Jesus has for us. All that to say, as I was thinking and reflecting this morning, it is the gospel of Jesus Christ that has changed my life. It wasn't the church per se that changed my life.
Right.
It wasn't the Bible per se that changed my life. All those great things. What changed me is the teaching, the commands of Jesus Christ. When I put them into effect, that really began to change every part of me, the internal part of me, where I'm not just worried about the things that I do or the things that I say. When I say worried, I'm very aware of how I think now, because thoughts lead to words and actions.
Right.
And I'll find myself even confessing thoughts that were wrong. Years ago, I would have never thought to confess a thought. But that's this narrow way is I want to be so in tune with the way of Christ that and it's not oppressive. I don't want it to sound, it's not oppressive. It's freeing to go, I don't want anything between me and another human being, between me and God. I just want to live out this way of love and forgiveness and care and grace and serving.
Yeah, and that's important clarifier, because it isn't driven to the degree that I'm where you are in there. It's not driven by wanting to follow the narrow way because God's just watching to see if you're starting to go to that
broad path.
So I'm going to zap you, or there's going to, now it flows out of, first of all, love and trust. In other words, where Jesus is leading me, and this is where I'm getting more, he's taking me playing places I'm not comfortable with, I don't like, but I found what you found. When I go down that path, there's some good things that happen, even if it's hard, even if it's, I've observed enough experientially, and it's what I trust and believe. I believe he's good, and I believe where he's taking me. So now I want to go where he's going. So now then also not just the trust factor, but I want to be with him.
Yes.
I love him. He's going that way. Listen, he loves people on the broad road, but he's on the narrow road.
He's going that way.
I want to be in my best moments. I want to be on the path with him.
And he's always inviting.
Right.
Always inviting those in the narrow road. And
that's what he did all the time. He was always calling off from even where he said, you've heard it said, everybody thinks this.
Yes.
This is the way it's done, but I say to you. But this was the call.
Narrow road.
No, come on. No. Way too many. Don't buy the idea that that's the best road, that's the road to happiness and joy and abundant life. No, come follow me, and you're going to find your life.
Yeah.
That the broad road looks like the way to life. Because everyone they're looking for life.
Sure.
They're looking for joy and hope and meaning. And Jesus says, you follow me, you're going to follow that life. And even if it costs you your life, even if taking this narrow trail has enormous cost for you, cost you your life, cost you your job, cost you your houses and lands, cost your health, whatever. You're going to be glad you took this trail.
Oh, yeah. So, Jesus would say, there's going to be people that kill you in my name, believing they're doing a service to God. But don't worry, not a hair of your head will perish. It's just he's always pointing us to the narrow road leads to life.
Yeah.
Leads to life, eternal life, this ongoing life.
You're never going to regret having taken the road less traveled.
Yes. It's
even the poet at the end saying, that's made all the difference. Don't regret for a second. So glad I took.
On a narrow way, you're going to run into some tight spots. It happens. We went through on my Grayson Highlands trip last weekend in around Damascus, Virginia, on the Appalachian Trail. Had 6 inches of snow, blinding 40-mile-an-hour winds and snow.
Mid-April. Isn't that funny?
Whiteout conditions. We're up at like 5,000 feet.
Right.
And at one point, it just looks like the Arctic Circle. I mean, because you can't see any of the normal You can't see the mountains around you. You can't see landmarks.
So you start losing,
I
orientation.
Oh my goodness! Second day we got out of our tents, and we had just literally we got onto the highlands after we went over Wilburn Ridge, which is an incredible. It looks like pictures of Everest up top. It's just cool, and it's the wind and snow is blowing up there, which makes it that much cooler. Well, we got down onto what's called the highlands, and it's wide open. Well, the wind is howling down there, just blowing snow. You can't see, and you realize we can't stay in this very long. We're all dressed up and super warm. You just can't. You're going to get super cold. It's just too much wind. The wind, when they got that much wind, it starts.
You're too much in the open.
You're too much in the open.
Okay.
So I bailed on where we were planning to camp, and I said, "Look, there looks like a knoll over there. We need to get behind something. We need a windbreak. We've got to get behind something where we can even set up a tent."
Yes, right.
So we found this kind of windbreak over just a knoll, and the wind was coming just over the top like a wind tunnel, just enough. Now you're still setting up tents, even behind this knoll. You're just getting one stake in the ground, and the rest of the tent's just blowing like crazy. You just got one stake, and then you get that one in good, and then you go to the other corner, you get the second stake, and the rest of the tent is still just blowing downwind. And it's literally, you get 4 corners. It's very slow, very tedious, because you have to get the stakes in good, and there's so much snow, you have to get down below the snow.
Okay.
To the ground.
Oh gosh.
Snow's not going to hold the tent. So it takes a long time to get tents set up. And then when I started putting the poles up, the wind's blowing so much sideways. I've got a center pole that's just laying over like this, when we're putting up the tent, and I get the cover on it, and I'm trying to keep that middle, and I just had to give up. All night I slept with a tent that was just sideways.
Okay.
Because of the way the wind was blowing, there's no way to guy it out enough to keep that wind. And I didn't want to break the tent trying to, to say, once you got in your tent, it was a glory hallelujah. It's just cool because now it warms up immediately. You're out of the wind more than anything. Because the cold was only like 30-something degrees. But with that kind of wind, it feels like negative wind chill numbers.
Yep.
You get inside your tent, you're like, oh, this is great. So we had our tents next to each other, and we're talking. We couldn't have a fire to talk around. So we're literally just talking between tents because they're all set there together.
Close. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, within feet of each other.
Okay.
And we had a great night just talking about all of that stuff. And
how many were on this trip?
So just 3 of us.
Okay.
So it's a very small trip. It was a father, son, and myself, and it was part of my hiking club. And a lot of people, once they saw the weather forecast, just bailed because originally we had like 9 people that were going to go. And then they're like snow and wind.
They missed the narrow way.
They missed the narrow way.
There was the 3, and then there were the 6.
So the next day I get up, Roger.
Beware the 6.
And it snowed far more overnight. And we could hear it, just coming in as sleet and snow. And it's that little pelletized snow. Yeah. That's like what's things called that you can, the pellet ice cream things. Anyway, but that's the kind of snow you were getting. No, it's just like little round pellet, like little round white BBs.
Yes. Okay. So I know. Yes. Okay. Right. Okay.
Well, it's everywhere. We got up the next morning and I'm completely disoriented. I can't even see Wilburn Ridge. I can't see what we just came over. You've got like 30 feet that you can see. So I'm working with All Trails on my phone, and I'm trying to figure out where is Mount Rogers, because we're going to do a day hike out to Mount Rogers, the tallest point, in that part of Virginia. And so we finally, I'm off trail and on trail. And we finally find a trail. When I say trail, okay, we're just assuming it's a trail. It's just covered in white.
Exactly.
You don't know where the trail is. And when you're on highlands that are clear, it's just, I've got one fabulous picture of the father and son walking on the highlands, and it's just like frozen tundra. There's no
like they're in the middle of nowhere. It
looks like they're on the Arctic Circle.
Okay.
I mean, it's just wild looking. But we finally, after like an hour of wandering around, get to Mount Rogers. Thank goodness for All Trails. Of course, then I'm thinking my battery is going to go dead because when it gets that cold, then I'm like, how are we going to get back to our camp? Because All Trails, I have a point where I know where our camp is. You can put a waypoint in. So it'll show a black dot. This is camp. But if that goes out,
so you're getting a little nervous.
Oh, I was nervous as a tick. I was just like, I'm like, but I had another battery with me. Actually, I had 2 batteries with me, which was great. So I could recharge my phone. Anyway, I got to Mount Rogers, beautiful. Now they're up there. There's like 8 inches of snow, which you're post-holing a couple of times, 12-inch drifts. Some of Mount Rogers, and then we wander. When I say wander, back to camp, you ought to see because it'll show the red line of how you got back to camp.
Okay.
And at one point, I'm just looking, and I'm like, and I see about 300 yards across, I see my orange tent, and I'm like, that's camp. So I immediately felt that flood of relief. So now we're just going straight across to this
Because
thing.
camp
There's
means
no
you can
trail.
warm up, you can
We
get
can warm up,
oriented.
we can get lunch, and then we can start the day 2 because we're gonna be hiking on day 2 as well. And it was just fun. I mean, it was a great trip. But I did shorten the trip. We were supposed to do a huge loop around this thing called the Scales, and I'm like, in these conditions, I'm just not comfortable with that.
Yeah.
It's just if we got way far away from the parking area and had to it might be hard to get back. So we kind of retraced our steps and then camped just outside Grayson Highlands State Park. You can't actually camp in the state park. So we were right on the edge of it, beautiful campsite, and we were determined to get a fire started. You'll love this. I use a marine flare. I'm like, I can get a fire started. I've got a marine flare. It burns like an acetylene torch for 3 minutes. So we got all this wood piled in there and small stuff and little things, and burns for 3 minutes. Nothing. I mean, you just couldn't get a fire. So I'm like, that's just not going to happen. The other guy works for like 30 minutes, keeps trying it. He's putting his like stove in there with the burner, just trying to get something, not happening. So I cook my meal. We're outside. We're going to sit outside, doggone it, because, you know, at that point, we're not in massive wind. We're off the highlands.
Right.
We've got our trees set up under these. Our tent set under these beautiful evergreen trees, just tucked away out of the wind. The ponies are roaming around, these wild ponies up there. And so I get my food cooked. I'm now committed.
How did you get your food? Oh, you had to cook it?
So we had a little stove, cooked it. It was yummy. It's going to be chicken and ramen and all this good stuff that when it's cold, this is really good. And Roger, the worst snowstorm we had of the entire trip hit just as soon as I started eating. So now there's just mountains of snow falling on everything, within minutes, covering everything.
Including your ramen.
You're trying to eat. You've got snow on you.
Lukewarm.
It's melting.
30 seconds.
Snow's just, but you have to finish it. I'm like, I'm not again. And it was just so bizarre. So then by 5 o'clock, it's back to the tents. There's so much snow out there, you can't just sit in it because you're getting covered. And because you have body heat, then it starts turning into water.
Okay.
And water's bad, not good. So it's flee to the tents. And then hour and a half later, it stops snowing. So I come back out and the ponies have come close. So I'm getting a picture of a pony. Well, he just comes
these
right
are
up
wild
to me.
horses.
Wild ponies that they released in the 30s up there on the highlands.
Yeah, that is awesome.
But apparently they're hungry. They can't eat their grass because it's under 6 inches of snow. So he comes up and just starts nibbling on my jacket.
What?
Yes. I'm like, okay, bad pony. Stop.
No. Heel.
And, the other guys are like, hey, we've got some popcorn. I said, whatever you do, don't feed them.
Yep.
I said, if you feed them, they will never go away. And so I said, I'm going back to my tent. At that point, he'd kind of moved off toward their tent. I'm just letting you know. So this other guy's got a great video of that horse sticking his face through the fly of his tent where he just zipped it to see it. The horse stuck his muzzle in there, like, just looking for food. I'm like, it's very disorienting. So great trip, but that was the Broadway most of the time. When I say you couldn't even find the trail, we're just like wandering on this huge. The other great thing about a narrow trail, I just thought about it, is it's better defined. The narrow trail has a little more definition.
Yeah.
Oh, I remember where I was going with that. We had to go through Fat Man Squeeze on day.
Yeah. You were starting risks.
So there's this thing. You're on Wilburn Ridge. If you go around the ridge instead of over it, we went over it on day 1. Conditions have gotten so bad now. I'm like, we're not going over the top. We're just going to fall. It's going to be bad. So you go around it, and in one section you go through about a 20-foot section that's about 2 feet wide, and you got backpacks on. So like you're just wriggling through there, and it's a tight spot. But it's cool as well. I got pictures of them coming out the other side because it's completely dark in there. Then you can start seeing light at the end. It's like a little tunnel through rock thing. Anyway, it was fascinating. So what did you want to talk about today? That was my narrow road diatribe.
No, it's good. I maybe the only other little thing that comes to mind was beware. I mean, I love what you've said because this is really where it comes down to doing.
Yes.
It's, and maybe that's just where we should stay. Because if I think again back to where Jesus comments, he even asked the one time, okay, there was a son whose father asked him to do something. He said, I'm going to do it. Dad, I'm going to get right on it. I'm going to do it.
And that was pretty much Bruce.
And he didn't do it. Then there was the one who said, nah, not interested in it, Dad. But then he went ahead and did it. And then Jesus, well, who who actually did the will of his
the will of
Father?
his Father.
And it's, well, the one who did. And I guess it's just wrapping with this idea, the 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 broad road could be full of a lot people who are saying the right things
and have good intentions.
good intention.
I believe that first son had every intention of actually doing it.
And it's why I think it's fair to say, and I got to wrestle with God which road I'm on at any given moment. But part of what I hear you saying is, and you hear this in the words of the prophets as well, it's not the people who are saying, Lord, Lord. It's not, even the prophets, they would come and say, yeah, you have your services, you're coming in and you got your festivals and you're doing these things that Jesus, that God,
the external things.
But justice has gone by the wayside. You're not paying people properly. You're abusing here. And so just the sobering word, even in churches today, in a church, there are people that are on the broad road, there are people on the narrow road. And at some point, yeah, the narrow road is, well, people who are actually doing it. And I wonder if also, if you don't see an analogy, even where at this point, more than once, but I think one particular, the crowds had gotten quite big.
Yeah.
And then Jesus starts talking about eating his flesh, drinking his blood. If you're going to follow me, my flesh is real food, real drink, and you're going to, and this idea is, oh, this is a hard saying. And many left. And
this is a hard saying. Understatement of the year.
But the analogy for me is, it's very easy to do that. And even today, Jesus can make a hard call. We look at one statement, but I think there's a larger picture here. Jesus says, my way looks this way. And we've got to beware. We sometimes will just say, oh gosh, that's too hard. And it's, for most of the people, most of it, it's not, oh, I'm not going to follow Jesus anymore. In other words, I'm not denouncing Christianity. I just don't do what he says. That's too much. Whether that's someone saying, oh, I can't forgive that, or, oh, I couldn't give that much.
Or if someone's suing me, I'm not going to possibly give them more than they're asking.
Yeah, you're not going to.
More than they're demanding.
Surely Jesus, he would understand, and we just have to beware the tendency to dismiss the hard words. And I know our time's running up, but I was thinking about this whole thing when she was talking about nullifying, taking one good thing and nullifying. He says, you got this law about stuff devoted to God.
Yes.
Nothing wrong with that. And actually, that's a big deal, devoting money to God. But you can actually, he said, it's gotten to a place you don't realize it, that now honoring your father and mother. And so they need some financial help, whatever. But no, I've devoted this to God.
So I'm not going to help you.
Right. So I'm not bound to this instruction. I don't. And Jesus just issuing the caution, you have to be very careful of how easy it can be to nullify a hard word or a difficult word or because I even thought about, how even when we were growing up, how strong the word was about the tithe. The tithe goes to church. The tithe.
Yep.
And I realized any idea that you would take the 10% set aside the tithe and help somebody in poverty
and help your parents,
help someone in need. Oh no, that's not what the tithe is for. I'm not saying our emphasis on the tithe was a bad thing, but we always have to be careful that we're not ruling out, nullifying, erasing is another way you can interpret that. And I think it's just easy with the hard words of Jesus. I'm a follower of Jesus. Very easy to say, yeah, oh gosh, I'm a Christian. I love Jesus. I do. But I'll tell you, I still run the moments. I told you some things with my taxes. Okay, I just, my tax bill has gotten so high. And then suddenly I remember, oh, this cash I was paid for this job I had.
Yeah.
And there's just this moment where I think the hard way of just pay the taxes that you owe, trust God, be honest. And I'm sitting saying, it's hard because it's going to cost me money. It's going to cost me
Right.
hundreds of dollars to be honest about that. And just in the smallest little way, I was just feeling the pull of the broad road and the narrow. Because gobs of people would say, it was cash. That's not a big, right.
There's a term that's used under the table.
Oh, under the right. That's, and everyone
You
understands.
only pay tax for what's on the table.
Right.
But for things under the table, you don't pay tax.
Right. It's not and I think but that's sort of Broadway thinking. And Jesus is saying, don't make that trade-off. You're going to be glad. Raj, okay, that being honest and being whole, being integrity, which is what whole, this idea is going to be better off than that $500 it's going to cost you. So, and it's true.
So don't live on Broadway. I just remember there was a street coming through Nashville, Broadway, that I was turning on. I was like, isn't that interesting, Broadway? I wonder if there's another road in a city they called Narrow Way. Where it's just, I don't know, it's more like an alley that you're going through. Here's where I wanted to finish, because one of the beautiful teachings of Jesus was always, it's never too late to repent. Because he would always, when he would tell those stories, he would say, unless you repent, you too will perish. The tower that fell on people, don't imagine that they're worse than you. You've still got time.
Right.
And it's like, I was telling someone yesterday in their 70s, hey, it's never too late to turn things around. It's never too late to begin stewarding your life well. It's never too late to begin following Jesus.
It's never too late from moving from the broad road
to the narrow road.
Even
absolutely.
I drift back over to the other.
I've been on the broad road all my life. Or if I've just been wandering between the two. It's never too late. That's why, and of course, Jesus tells that story about, because he was talking about this repentance thing. He said, by the way, if your adversary is taking you to court, he said, do everything you can to be reconciled with him on the way, or he might hand you over to the judge, and the judge might hand you over to the magistrate, and he might hand you over to the jailer. And you're not going to get out until you pay everything. But it's this thing of, while there's time, be reconciled with God and people. Get on this narrow road. Do the things that Jesus said. It's not too late to join the narrow road crusade.
Take the road less traveled by, and that will make all the difference.
Take the road less traveled. It has far less gravel.
That
was good. It's very solid.
That was something.
It's good. I don't know why you never like my words.
Gravel, like, really?
Only your poems.
Gravel?
Never my poems. Can't help it.